Welcome, everyone, and we are very happy to see you. And those who we can't see, we're even happier in a way on the live stream. Antitypical Elijah. Who is Antitypical Elijah? What was his work? Starting from Zechariah 12:6. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like an hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheaf. And they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. It matters not what we think. God is to have a strong, faithful people, the very kind here described. And I just read this and I'm impressed. A strong, faithful people. This is what the Lord wants us to be, and this is what we're going to have a chance to become. Because it's by the time these things, the shaking and the trials and the troubles are over, only the strong and faithful people will remain, will survive. And Jerusalem is to be inhabited by holy people, not a sinner among them. Since the antitypical prophet Elijah, who appears just before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, just before the judgment day for the living, just before. Is that just before from a human point of view? Or is it just before, is God, it's God who is speaking. It's just before in his point of view. Who appears just before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, just before the judgment day of the living, finds the church overrun by the devil as badly as was the Jewish church in Christ's day. And as the saints, the first fruits are to be rescued one by one, he at first sends fishers to fish them. Who is he? It is, exactly, thank you. It is antitypical prophet Elijah that is the referent of he. Excuse me. And as the saints, the first fruits, are to be rescued one by one, he at first sends fishers to fish them out, and afterwards hunters to hunt them out. Jeremiah 16:16. Thus he gathers them one by one. Isaiah 27:12 and 13. And so it is today, they are fished by this free literature and are now hunted by men right to their houses, be they in the city, village, or countryside. So, antitypical Elijah, prophet Elijah, appears, and he gathers them one by one. And with a he sends fishers first and hunters afterwards. And it is today, when this was written, that this was happening. Antitypical prophet Elijah has come and started the work for the church, the work of fishing and hunting. Now, there are some people who think that antitypical Elijah must be here for all parts of the work. But notice that he says he at first sends the fishers. He does not go himself. He sends the fishers and the hunters. So do you think that it would make any difference if the fishers and hunters are sent by his helpers while he's not here? Would that hurt anything? Would that stop the work? It will not stop the work in any way. So the argument that Elijah must be here when he has already brought the message is a false argument. The message that it was his work to bring, he has brought. And he has also explained to us that his helpers, the servants of the 11th hour, that he calls himself, are going to also assist in the work. So the Lord is going to have a strong people. We are going to get our work done and go home to Jerusalem. It is a good thing. But it is not a good thing if we get mixed up and say, Antitypical prophet Elijah, who is he? Why? He has to be here. We need a prophet now. You cannot have two antitypical prophet Elijahs. If prophet Elijah has come already, another one can't come and say, I am really the real prophet Elijah. Okay? So once we understand this, did I lose the reference? I'm sorry. But it's a General Conference special, I believe. But, it's in the TGs. But once we see this, we will not be snared by the false idea that Elijah must be here today. Now, these are 7 points that we are going to go through and consider during this study. And I hope that if we can take away these 7 points, they will act as a help to other people. I trust that nobody has to have help themselves, understanding that Antitypical prophet Elijah has come. But this is some thoughts that are helpful to people. Number 1, the Elijah of Malachi's prophet represents a message which is to be delivered not to the world, but to the professed people of God. Now, the point here that I want to emphasize, there's many points, but is that Elijah's, Antitypical Elijah's message is to the professed people of God. Who are the professed people of God? Huh? Adventists. Very good, very good. Okay, so if we have a person come and say, my message is to the Methodists, my message is to the Baptists, I'm Elijah, my message is to Davidians, he's not the antitypical prophet Elijah. He's something, but he's not that. Number 2. Now, one other thing before I go. People who have specialized in sophistry and can explain anything. And if you wish to, they will explain how they really are going to take it to the professed people of God, but first they have to take it in a different direction. Professed people of God over here, Davidians over here, and we have to go here first, then we go there. But that's not what the Lord said. And it is always disobedience to put our own mind, our own understanding on it. The Lord through Samuel told him to save nothing of the Amalekites, but he saved the best of the flocks and so on, to offer for offering, you understand. But that was his own doing. Just accept the word of the Lord the way it is. And when the Lord says to the professed people of God, that's all we have to know. Just so Elijah's message at this time will denounce the denominational corruptions. What is Elijah's message to do? It's pointing toward the associational corruptions, denominational corruptions, okay? Right. Number 3, the message to the church of the Laodiceans is a startling denunciation. It is the message to the 11th hour church of Davidians. Okay, that's where some people are taking their message to Davidians, to the 11th hour church. But it's the message to the church of the Davidians. Now, the context is very important on all of these things, and we're going to deal with the context. So remember, the context, these things are not taken out of context. The context explains and supports it further. Number 4, the Mount Carmel Academy is the school of the Elijah message, the prophet of today. Okay, so the prophet of today was Elijah, antitypical Elijah, and the Mount Carmel Academy is the school of Elijah. Can you have Elijah's school if Elijah is not there or didn't start it in some way? You can't. Okay, so that we wouldn't say today that our school is the school of Elijah. We would say it's the school of Elijah's message, or we might say it is the school of the prophets, but we would not say it is the school of Elijah. Well, sorry, let me take that back. The Mount Carmel Academy is the school of the Elijah message, the prophet of today. And in saying prophet of today, he has directly connected it there to the Elijah message. Number 5, the message which is to close the gospel work is the one which is to be brought by the antitypical prophet Elijah. So that message, whatever that message is, that message was brought by antitypical Elijah. Don't let anybody be confused on that issue. As Elijah the type reestablished the schools of the prophets in his time, so Elijah the antitype must do likewise in the day of his appearance. So this Elijah is the antitype, the antitypical Elijah that establishes the schools of the prophets at Mount Carmel. Number 7, the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes as a result of the proclamation of the message of Elijah the prophet. So this message, the great and dreadful day of the Lord, is the message which is to close the gospel work right here. It is to be the one brought by antitypical Elijah. Now, I know these things seem real self-evident to you, but they're not to some people. And that is very sad. It's actually tragic if you can't help them. And I'm sure that if you, there's not one teacher here that's not working day and night to reach out and help people who are confused on this and any other subject. Unmistakably, therefore, the clear light shedding forth from type, from testimonies of the prophets, and from history, identify the message of the rod as the only one ordained to lead the latter-day church freed from sin and sinners into the land of promise, when the times of Gentiles be fulfilled. So we did talk about this last week. It is the only message that is ordained, the message of the rod. Now, who is the author of the rod? The author of the rod, of course, is, in antitypical terms, is antitypical Elijah. And in actual terms, it's Brother V.T. Howduff. And these are things that are beyond question, okay? These are things that are very easily and settled with very large amount of evidence, which we're not touching today, obviously, because it's not practical to do more than skim the surface on this. Moreover, as the shepherd's rod is the Elijah message, it is impossible for anyone who accepts it and lives it to die, for the type demands translation. Thus it is that Elijah stands as a type of the 144,000. Thus, Elijah stands as a type of the 144,000 living translated saints. This is typical Elijah. The message is very clear. It is typical Elijah. It has no reference to anyone else. So this Elijah that stands as a type for the 144,000, it is the typical Elijah, what we sometimes refer to as Elijah the Tishbite. And just as he was translated, the 144,000 are going to be translated. Now, there's something here that has confused people for a while, and I don't think any of us are confused here, I believe, but let's read this. It is impossible for anyone who accepts and lives it to die. Now, have you ever heard of anyone who both fully accepted the message and fully lived the message perfectly? Now, so there isn't. It has not been done, but it will be done. 144,000 plus will be doing it as they are sealed. Okay? So we will live this message perfectly, and as we do live this message perfectly, it is impossible for us to be sealed to die, because we will be sealed. Okay, I know I've covered this before. I think you're looking at me like you hadn't heard this before. Okay, good, thank you. And brethren, it's self-evident that you either accept what the message is saying here, or you say it's wrong, okay? And if you say it's wrong, if one thing is wrong, all of it is uninspired, okay? So, and Brother Adolf says the reason, the way he gets that is the Lord is able to bring us into all truth, right? And if he hasn't brought us into all truth, then it's not the Lord, it's not the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Spirit has brought us into all truth. And this statement here needs no personal twisting or explaining or so on. It doesn't matter how it got in there. It was approved by the prophet. And even if he did not know what he was doing, always remember, God knew what he was doing. Okay? God knew what to put in and what not to put in. And see, that's where people have to understand. It's not a man, it wasn't a man Houteff leading. It was the Lord leading, and everybody looks at Brother Houteff and like, he did this, he was doing that, but it's the Lord that was leading. Okay, so Elijah, the Elijah that stands as a type to the 144,000 is not a living Elijah. Some people will say, well, you need a living Elijah to be the type of the 144,000. That was not the thought, brethren. The thought was the original, typical Elijah. And that is something that's clearly taught in the message in other places as well.
I just, when I listened to what you said just now, that you were just watching at you, certain statements can really make me like come taken aback. Because if you could just go back to the quotation just now, it says it is impossible for anyone who accepts it and lives it to die. Demands it. Demands translation, you know. So it was just amazing for me.
And it's a thought that could be expanded on, Sister Stanley. It's a very important thought. I think it gives us hope and motivation But remember, we can't do this on our own, and so far, no one has done it that we know from the past. So this requires us to be a Davidian indeed. We have to, not for our own strength and our own glory, but we have to be perfect in all our ways. And I know that people have a lot of problems with the word perfect, being perfect and so on. But this message is not teaching us to be almost perfect. This message does not, the standard is not, you can almost do the right thing. We are to do the right thing at the right time, always. Okay? And when we do that, we will be ready for the seal. And in fact, we will receive the seal. And all those who receive the seal cannot die. It is quite remarkable, and it's either true or it's not true. I believe, brethren, it is true. And it will work just as we say. And I hope people will understand we have a long ways to go, all of us. We all have different little things. Sometimes we're careless, sometimes we're this and that, and then other people can be offended because we have done something in this way or that way. Neither is right. We don't have a choice to do wrong in the first place or be upset about someone doing wrong. We need to be strong, peaceful, loving, obedient Davidians indeed, who have mastered our religion with the help of God. And we can do that. We can do miracles with God. And the first and greatest miracle is going to be ourselves, which He wants to do. He has promised us He wants to do that. People all want to do other kinds of miracles. And the one miracle that He has promised to help us achieve is the one miracle we don't put the time and effort in that we have to. We talked about this, and it's forgotten now mostly, but it takes time and effort. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it takes a special kind of time and effort. So there's a lot to this subject, and we're coming back to it. But if we do become the Davidian indeed, living our message daily, and we live it successfully, the message does not ask us to live it halfway. We don't get the opportunity to be halfway good Davidians. There's nothing in the message that says that. It's like a good spiritual pasture. Because it doesn't say all good, some people make a point on that. Whereas it's very clear that good is all good. Okay? A good spiritual pasture can only be good. Well, it's the same way with people. A Davidian indeed can only be a all good Davidian. We cannot be a half good Davidian. And we need to be especially a good Davidian when we're by ourselves, when we're in the town, when no one's watching us. So all of those things are part of this requirement that for us to accept it and to live it. Okay? I feel like there's things that we have not accepted. We have not really accepted the need for prayer and meditation. And all those things, you do not get exceptional, incredible, wonderful results by doing the same thing over and over. You get the same results by doing the same things over and over. Okay, so we have to, there's just a lot here, Sister Stanley, and so I like this very much, this thought, and it was something that we need to go into later. Okay, so let's move on. Though Though Christ and gospel workers apply this scripture to Christ's first advent, any student of sacred history knows that it did not meet its perfect fulfillment there. For the Jews did not delight in him as prophesied in Malachi 3:1, but instead they hated him. Neither did Christ at that time purify his church as described by the prophet, but by the fact that Christ applied Malachi 3 to John the Baptist's message, and as this scripture did not meet its fulfillment at that time, it proves that John was a type of the Elijah that is to come before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Is there anything more clear that John is a type of Brother Howduff? It's very clear. What is one of the foremost things that stick in your mind about the story of John, at least for me? It's having his head served up on a platter. He died. It proves that John was a type of the Elijah that is to come before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Malachi 4:5, at which time the prophecy will be fulfilled in its fullness. In its fullness, and it was. Brother Howduff restored all things. He set the power in motion, the power of the message of the Lord in the message and in the hands of the helpers. He set it in motion, and in its fullness, it required him to die. And it's not that he was required to die in the sense that the Lord is like, I have this type here and I want it perfect, but the Lord knew that type would fit perfectly and used it. Therefore, as John was a messenger to God's own people at that time, just so at this time, the Elijah of Malachi's prophecy represents a message. Now, many times over and over in the message, we see this just so at this time, today, now, and so on. It's as clear as Brother Howduff can be who is the Elijah that he's talking about now, right here. And anyone who doesn't see that is not seeing it because it's not because it's not clear. It's not because it's not repeated many times in the message. It's simply they've got other things in their mind, other thoughts in their heart. Just so at this time, the Elijah of Malachi's prophecy represents a message which is to be delivered not to the world, but to the professed people of God. As John was their last prophet, his message was their final means to fit them for the Messiah's appearing, for which cause, said the Master, if ye will receive it, this is Elias, which was to come. Matthew 11:14. Likewise, Elijah's message of today must be to the professed people of God, and it is to be their last means to fit them for Christ's appearing at this time. Now, the message contains a very strong barrier to any other message coming. Now, other messages have come. The enemy is very skilled and determined. But over and over, the message makes clear, this is the last message, okay? So it's to be their last means. No, we have another message to help you with that. And another one, and another one. Brethren, it's not so. There is no other. This last means is the last means. It's the last means to fit them for Christ's appearing at this time. Thus, as John declared that those who claimed to be the chosen people of God were defiled by sin, and that without purification of heart and life they could have no part in the Messiah's kingdom, Desire of Ages, page 104, just so the Elijah's message at this time will denounce the denominational corruptions, the abominations in the midst thereof, rebuking the prevailing sins, and exclaim, what greater deception can come upon human minds than a confidence that they are right when they are all wrong. They know not that their condition is deplorable in the sight of God. The message to the church of the Laodiceans is a startling denunciation. This message is to the Laodiceans. Now, if you're working hand in glove with Satan, you will turn this and say, this message to the Davidians. Every point you will turn. Every point you will just shift back the other way. God does not do that. God does not turn his words like that. There's no need for God to turn his words directly in another direction. It is Satan. And those who work with Satan will do these things, okay? So, just so Elijah's message at this time will denounce the I know there's no word like that, associational corruptions. Okay? Denominational, yes, but if you're a servant of Satan, you're going to try to point it at the Davidians over and over and over. It's very obvious. It's very wrong. We live in the end times where those who will pretend to be righteous and good and are really in the service of the enemy. We know that the enemy himself will impersonate Christ, but and Sister White described some of the things about that. But those same traits, some of those same traits, that's going to be manifested in the behavior of his agents, of those people who have given themselves up through ambition, pride, a desire to have control and power and so on, have put their mind to work with the enemy. And what I'm saying is as you know, the teachings of Brother Lennox Sam and the Wave Chief, you will see is startlingly exact. It fits. It is just what they do. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. This is one of the things that Brother Hadaf restored. There's actual things in the message on this that we have to put forward, and it is one of the things that is sitting there that we I'm not forgetting, but it just has to be done. Hence, as Mount Carmel Academy is the school of the Elijah message, the prophet of today, it is therefore that warning voice which is to come to awake parents and children out of their sad deception and to educate them away from their natural habits of life and bring them into obedience to the divine precepts, laws, and statutes. And all of these things is part of that message of the restitution of restoring the family to the Edenic ideal. The message which is to close the gospel work is the last of all gospel messages before the close of probation. It is the one which is to be brought by antitypical prophet Elijah, for he is to appear just before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and is to restore all things. It is one person. It is antitypical prophet Elijah. Now, they have, the Wave Chief Brethren have a thing where they say, we believe that Elijah is a prophet, that Brother Hadaf is Elijah, okay? And if you don't know what they really think, you can be temporarily fooled. But what they believe is that he is, like we talked about last week, he is prototypical Elijah. Now, the whole prototypical thing is without basis. A prototypical Elijah is completely without basis in the message. You cannot teach what is not there. No rod teacher can teach what is not in the message. It's impossible. It's impossible to teach prototypical Elijah for any rod teacher. Now, if you're a wave sheaf teacher, you can teach anything you want. Okay, but for a rod-only teacher, we can't teach that because it's not in the message. You just will not find the word, the phrase, or the thought even of prototypical Elijah. We can't do that if it's not there. Furthermore, as this last message is brought by the Elijah of today, seems I lost this reference too, but it's on the short quotation slide. Furthermore, as this last message is brought by Elijah of today, then the message which the ancient prophet Elijah carried to Israel of old must be a type of this last message, which is not only to restore all things, but is also to bring the end of all wickedness by changing the heart of the penitent and destroying the impenitent. And this is a profound statement right here. It is also to bring an end to all wickedness. This message, and because that's true, because it's in the message and because it's true, those who want to keep wickedness safe for the future are directly going to try to destroy us. Okay? That's what they're going to do. As the schools of the prophets in Elijah's time had fallen into decay and were in need of being reestablished, the schools of the prophets in our time likewise have fallen into decay, else the Elijah message of old could not be a type of the Elijah message of today. Moreover, as Elijah the type reestablished the schools of the prophets in his time, so Elijah the antitype must do likewise in the day of his appearance. So, Antitypical Elijah restored the schools of the prophet, the school of the prophet at Mount Carmel. There's a lot on the message, a lot in the codes and so on that subject. Very clearly, Elijah, Brother Howdeth, restored the schools of the prophets. Is the great and dreadful day of the Lord the same as the second coming of Christ? Now, Elijah, one of the things that we know Elijah by is he brought the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And this is the answer, code 7 to 12, page 9. As seen from Malachi 4:5, the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes as a result of the proclamation of the message of Elijah the prophet. So the point that I want to put here is this is Brother Howdeth's message. And it's repeated many times in many different ways. The message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, the message of the judgment for the living. This is different names for Brother Howdeth's message, and the other name of the message that we know it by is the shepherd's rod message. Okay, all part of Brother Howdeth's message, not somebody else's message. Now, you know for sure that Brother Trevor did not bring the shepherd's rod. Okay? You know that for sure. One of the little coincidental things is Brother Sam and I are almost exactly the same age. And you know that I wasn't born when the message came of the shepherd's rod, okay? I had nothing to do with the shepherd's rod, and neither did he. So, the proclamation to say that, for me to say that I am, that's my message, that I'm Elijah because I brought that message is, I mean, you'd have to like haul me off right away. Really, seriously, anyone who says that needs to be hauled off to the asylum, okay? Seriously, and we think it's just perfectly normal in Davidia for people to get up and claim to be Elijah, antitypical Elijah. That's my message over there. But it wasn't his message. It's no one's message but the prophet's message, Brother Howduff. Antitypical Elijah, and we established that it's antitypical Elijah. And we established what his message is, the great and dreadful day of the Lord, the shepherd's rod, the message of the purification of the church. So I hope that people will see these things and not just know them for themselves, but help other people with it. Every single Davidian, everywhere, true Davidian, should be concerned for their brothers and sisters. We certainly don't see eye to eye with our Davidian sisters in Waco or Mountaindale, but those brethren are true Davidians, whether you like it or not for me to say that. Okay, they are Davidians, and they are a part of Jacob's household in the long run. Okay, those who want to be. So there's a difference. There's a big difference. We don't really work for the branch. We will help anybody who needs help, but you understand that branch Davidians are so far out that we don't even know how far out they are these days. I see some new ones and that new prophets and so on that I never even knew about. So they're still madly splintering with new prophets continuing as usual. And we don't try to keep up with that. And Brother Sam and his Elijah ideas for himself are actually beyond the pale too. Okay? He has turned the rod inside out and to justify himself, and he's really beyond the pale. And so why are we concerned with him? Because he is concerned with us. It's his mission to take his message to each Davidian, and because that's what his mission is, we have to be concerned. Okay, the Davidians need to know these things, be safe from these things, and if we are able to pull out any of his people from the burning house that they're in, we want to do that too, before the whole thing burns down. Yes.
I was impressed when you shared several statements earlier in your presentation. One of them is from Symbolic Code, Volume 3, Number 3, pages 4 and 5. There were more than one statement that referred to the prophet of today or the message of today. This particular statement from Volume 3 of the Symbolic Code, Number 3, pages 4 and 5, refers to Mount Carmel Academy as the school of Elijah, the Elijah message, the prophet of today. Now we know that Mount Carmel Academy was in existence during the years of 1935 through 1955 while Brother Howduff was alive. And that was the prophet that was being referenced there. There was no other person on hand accomplishing that work. So I think that for those who don't know or understand these type of references, they should take into consideration when they were published and where they were published. Because Lennox Sam, by purporting himself to be antitypical Elijah, is adding to the rod testimony and defrauding the sheep because of what they don't know. So this statement to me is very plain. The prophet of today, quote unquote, that is spoken of in this volume was during the years of Mount Carmel, 1935 to 1955.
Thank you. It's a good point, and the dates need to be noticed. Thank you. That is exactly correct there. It's very clear. You see that it's addressed to the Davidians right there. Other things that you need to pay attention to: who is the target audience. Sometimes he will take a statement that's targeted toward Laodiceans and turn that back into Davidians. Okay, so there's various little things that he does, but mentioning the dates is very important. Brother Davin.
Can you touch on the showdown? Can you touch on the showdown a little bit? Because one of the understandings is that Mount Carmel also, because it's a mixture kind of thing. Mount Carmel is also still in existence, and therefore Elijah has a place, and that there's going to be a showdown between the Elijah that's at Mount Carmel and the prophets of Baal, which are actually the opposing Davidian teachers. So can you touch on the showdown a little bit?
Yes, but excuse me. But I don't necessarily want to do it right now. The showdown is very interesting because it's not what people think it is. The showdown is not slaughtering people, okay? And for a long time, people have thought that that's what it was and so on. And it's more to it than that, and we need to teach all of the rod, not part of the rod, okay? So that is something that we need to, we'll get to. So let me resume here, and we will get to that, okay? Not now, but that is an important thing. Okay, Malachi 3:1-2. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. Two persons are here disclosed to view. A multitude of persons are here disclosed to view. Two, okay, are here disclosed to view. The messenger and the Lord. The messenger is to precede the coming of the Lord. He is to prepare the way, and then the Lord is to appear. And who could this messenger be if not the one whom the Lord names? He declares, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Malachi 4:5. This messenger of the covenant, of the promise, antitypical Elijah the prophet, shall prepare the way. He shall restore all things. So, again showing that the person who brought the message, the messenger of the covenant, who brings this message, is antitypical Elijah the prophet. If someone tells you that he's prototypical Elijah, basically you need to almost end the conversation, because I doubt that they are going to believe you when you tell them that there's no prototypical Elijah taught in the message, okay? and that it is antitypical Elijah the prophet that shall prepare the way and restore all things. The work of ancient Elijah. Now, I understand how he's using, in one sense, John to be the prototypical prophet, but he cannot say what is not in the message. You don't make it up. You're putting your own thoughts on that. If the Lord had wanted that said, it would have been in there. But it was the Lord had a different way of expressing it for a different purpose. And you say, well, that's not good enough. Let me fix it up. Let me tell Elijah how to teach his message. Okay, and that's what's going on. We have people all over telling Elijah, the real antitypical Elijah, how to teach his message. He should have said prototypical John, Elijah. The work of ancient Elijah, you know, was the closing work from typical apostate Israel, the church. Likewise, the work of Elijah of this day must be the antitypical closing work for his temple, the church, before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The work of the real Elijah is for the church. You can have any number of fraudulent Elijahs doing any number of other things, but the work of the real Elijah is for the church. Moreover, if Elijah is a messenger, he is to have a message. His message is to be heart-searching. Now, we're speaking of antitypical Elijah here, okay? And you can know that from the context and from what his job is, and just later on in the same paragraph. If Elijah is a messenger, he is to have a message. His message is to be heart-searching, for he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers. The fathers shall long to see their children saved, and the children shall long to see their fathers saved. Remember, there's a whole teaching, a whole message here for us on this restored teaching. And this revival and reformation shall in truth be crowned with the purification of the church, with the Lord slaying the antitypical false prophets of today. Now, the slaying of the false prophets is the purification of the church, Ezekiel 9, okay? And you will see cases where the showdown is also connected with Ezekiel 9, and that is because Sister White teaches that that God destroys no one. We destroy ourselves when we reject the truth. Okay, and so the showdown is the rejection of the truth, and it is in that very real way. Brother Hadif makes a point. Is it if you have an instrument of capital punishment that cuts off a person's head or whatever, what is the cause of the person's death? Their sentence in court or the instrument of death? And it's the sentence in court that is responsible for their death. Okay, in the real way. I know everybody looks at the instrument, the sword or whatever, but the message teaches that it is the sentence of death. So when we reject the message, we have that sentence placed on us. And you're hearing this all because of Brother Davin, who is now asleep, but sorry, Brother Davin. but since he asked about the showdown, we touched on it again.
And it's their crime. It's their crime
Yeah.
that caused the sentence.
Yeah, exactly. The rejection of the truth. Yeah. Moreover, if Elijah is okay, move on. Moreover, we all know that the work of typical Elijah was to do away with the prophets and priests who served Baal instead of the God, those who led ancient Israel into the greatest fallacy and folly of the day. Accordingly, the antitypical Elijah's work, being in the spirit and power of typical Elijah, must therefore be similar to typical Elijah's work, restoring truth and righteousness, and bringing judgment upon the false prophets and teachers in the antitypical day of judgment, antitypical day, which in itself is the separating of the chaff from the wheat, the work of the judgment for the living. So that's the antitypical, the real antitypical Elijah's work. Now, you know that there were 7,000 who had not bent the knee to Baal. If you had a false Elijah in those days, he would say, "It's my job to work for the 7,000. Forget about the prophets of Baal. That's not my job right now." And he would let the prophets of Baal go on. Okay? And that is an exact analogy to the way Brother Sam is working. He wants to work for the 7,000 who have not bowed the knee. And he is supposed to be working for the church, for those who are in danger of the judgment. That as the Elijah of Christ's first advent was one person, and also as the Elijah of Mount Carmel of old was one person, not a multitude of priests, then by parity of reasoning, the Elijah of today must also be one person, not a multitude of ministers. Now, it's one person. One person. Antitypical Elijah, V.T. Houdiff, one person. The promise itself, moreover, is only for one, not for more. Now, this is a critical point here. This is a key point that we're going to talk about. The promise itself, moreover, is for only one, not for more. And with but one exception, we know not of any other time when God employed even two prophets, let alone many at one time, to convey one message to one people. He invariably called one, and that one himself, under the direction of the Spirit, employed others to help him take the message to the people. Thus only were any others ever identified with the called ones. Now, all of this is just mostly a explanation of how there's only one, okay? And the part in yellow, we know not of any other time when God employed even two prophets, let alone many at one time, to convey one message to one people. So remember that God is, Brother Houdiff says, God is not employing two prophets at one time to convey one message. That's the thought, okay? But it's not meant to be an excuse here. Some people will turn this into excuse, and it's not an excuse for this reason. All this is just an illustration in yellow and so on. It's just an illustration. Here's the key point in blue. Or actually, I didn't put it in blue, but the promise itself, moreover, is for only one. It's a promise, okay? The promise is for only one. Do you see? Okay, now he's giving an illustration here from history, from the Bible, of how we know not of any time except one when this was ever done and so on. But that doesn't matter. It could have been two times. Maybe you look through the Bible and find another time Brother Houdiff didn't know. It doesn't matter. The thing is the promise itself, moreover, is for only one. It's a promise that is for one person, one Elijah. Okay? This is a very important point because other people try to squeeze in there with this. There is no room to squeeze in because while you're looking at the part in yellow, it's really this part that I didn't, I'm sorry I didn't get my blue all the way there, but it is the promise itself, moreover, is for only one. Now, what does that mean? It means that in this case, it's promised one person and it's not two people delivering one message. Okay? This is how it works with two people. It says, when God employed even two prophets to convey one message. Now, he is saying that Brother Sam says that it's his job to interpret the shepherd's rod message. That's his job, okay? And so he's there helping, holding on to the message and conveying it to people in his own special way. But here's the thing. It's not so. It was the promise itself, moreover, is for only one. One person, one Elijah, one antitypical Elijah, and the name of that person is not Lennox Sam. Okay, I probably, it's not seeming that impressive the way I'm explaining it, but it's an open and shut point, okay? Sadly, those who would believe a lie and thus play the fool will do so. Nothing will stop them. Now, you wave sheaf brethren, this message is a prophecy, it's a prophetic message, and the Lord down through time is speaking to you. Okay? This is the Lord prophetically speaking through time to you brethren. And if you don't think he can do that, you don't understand the Lord and the way he works. But he is speaking directly to you. Sadly, those who would believe a lie and thus play the fool will do so. Nothing will stop them. It is to be devoutly hoped, though, brethren, that you are followers of God and of his Spirit in truth, and that you are not followers of men. People who want to hold on to their human leader no matter what. He's my prophet. I'm going to follow him no matter what. There are people who do that. And it's not what we are to do. We're holding on to the truth. We don't hold on to people. If you hold on to people, you're going to be disappointed. If you're here because you mistakenly think well of Brother Trevor, you're going to be sorry. The first time you see me lose my temper, okay? Okay, so you cannot look at the people, the message says. You've got to hold on to the truth. And this is what we're addressing to people in the wave sheaf, this very thought. That you are not followers of men or of self, for the gravity of the issue challenges all to the most honest thought and courageous decision. We should now, therefore, the more earnestly proceed with these concluding considerations. Since God is not experimenting, and since he means just what he says, there should be no doubt in your minds that the scriptures concerning Antitypical Elijah, he who is to awaken the church and warn the Laodiceans of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, make sure that he is one person. I'm not sure why we're even doing this, except there's a lot of people who evidently do not read and study the rod with a real understanding. What is the Lord's counsel concerning the voice of Elijah's publications, and what is the title of them? The answer comes through Micah the prophet. The Lord's voice crieth unto the city, and the man of wisdom shall see thy name. Hear ye the rod, and who hath appointed it? Micah 6:9. Here is a rod which speaks, and its voice, the scripture points out, is the voice of God to his people. And since the shepherd's rod, the publications which contain the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, is the only rod that is ever spoken, then it is that God's publications, then it is that the rod publications which the Lord demands all to hear. Now, who is the author of the rod? V.T. Houdeff. So this ties this thought together. The Elijah is the author of the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. That message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord is also known as the shepherd's rod, as we talked about earlier. And the author of that shepherd's rod is Brother Houduff, is Victor T. Houduff. So again, showing that Antitypical Elijah has come, he has brought his message, and it is doing its work, and it has no connection with Brother Sam. The news broadcast throughout the Sisterhood of Churches and conferences in both home and foreign fields that the author of the Shepherd's Rod is not a Seventh-day Adventist is the blackest falsehood. Now, this is just a little thing that Brother Houduff wrote, and I just cut it short there. It's not necessary to read it all, but we know that the author of the Shepherd's Rod, because he identifies himself right here, okay, and many other places, and on the title page of the books and the tracts. So it is not something that is difficult to understand. So once again, just review quickly these 7 points. The Elijah of Malachi's prophecy represents a message which is to be delivered not to the world, but to the professed people of God. Now, when we say not to the world, it is also inherent, it's implicit that it is not to Davidia. If it's to the professed people of God, then it's not going to be to Davidians over here, okay? It's to Laodicea, and Brother Sam has blundered in so many ways. I don't know what you know. It's like a nightmare if you imagine yourself to be him. He has distorted and corrupted the message in such profound ways, but they're profound in their far-reaching, but they're not profound in their intellectually viable, intellectually deep thinking, and really could cause someone to pause and say, that's some pretty good thinking there, Brother Sam. Let's think that through. You really got into that deep. It's not. It's all superficial. It's childishness. And why anyone would let themselves fall for it is mystery of iniquity in action. Just so Elijah's message at this time will denounce the denominational corruptions. Stick to denouncing the denominational corruptions. Do not be deceived. Satan has conceived a very cunning plan with the Wave Sheaf Brethren. They are not going to Davidians anymore. They're not going to the church. They have stopped their sighing and crying. They will deny that, but for all practical purposes, they have stopped their sighing and crying for the church. And they work entirely for the Davidians. Okay? This is a wonderful thing from Satan's point of view. They could work for the rest of eternity and they would never finish the work that God has given us. And that has to be done for the church. And that's exactly why it means so much to Satan to see them busy doing that work. Because while they're doing that work, the work for the church is languishing. It's slowed down. And of course, we understand Satan wants to slow the work and stop the work. He will stop the work with the second wave of the pandemic if he can. I don't know what things he has in his mind, but he will try everything he can to harm the work. And I'll tell you what, instead of harming the work, he caused us to go in a different direction. If we cannot go to jet off on our favorite overcrowded flights to Africa or Philippines, we started working in a different way. And it is actually very, very productive and very beneficial. So he cannot, in the long run, stop or hinder the work. And when I say we, by the way, it's all the senior brethren are deep into working with different groups. So it is many different ways, things that we're doing. The message to the church of the Laodiceans is a startling denunciation. Mount Carmel Academy is the school of the Elijah message, the prophet of today. The message which is to close the gospel work is the one which is to be brought by antitypical Elijah. You cannot, there's other plain statements like that, but it is just too plain, too much evidence. And if we did 49 statements here, there would still be people who would ignore it. As Elijah the type reestablished the schools of the prophets in his time, so Elijah the antitype must do likewise in the day of his appearance. And he did. And that article further on directly attests to that. The great and dreadful day of the Lord comes as a result of the proclamation of the message of the wave sheaf prophet. It comes as a result of the proclamation of the message of Elijah the prophet. It is the real Elijah the prophet, and unless that proclamation is made, the great and dreadful day of the Lord will not come. And that's where Satan is coming from. He wants it like that. Analysis proves that the truth has never come at any time by the power and wisdom of men, but by the Spirit of God through the instruments of his own choice. Said Jesus, when the Spirit of truth is come, he will guide you into all truth. If we should believe the words of the Master, then we must conclude that the rod contains either all truth or there is no truth in it, save quotations of the truth. Therefore, if we admit one truth revealed by the rod, we must admit it all. If God has been able to guide his servants in the past into all truth, he is able now. He's just as able then with Brother Houdoff. Therefore, we take the position that the message in the rod is free from error insofar as the ideas put forth are concerned. So, it is no error to say the antitypical Elijah has come. He had brought the message, antitypical Elijah brought the message. If we are going to say that he did not bring the message, that it is Brother Sam who is the real antitypical Elijah, then we are saying that there is error here. Okay? Either Brother Houdoff is right or Brother Sam is right, not both. So, it is a case of someone who is running without being sent. And we see that all the time. There's a nice old gentleman who, in fact, I showed you his picture before, Brother Brunken, and he comes by way of the calendar research. What was his name? The person? Johnson. Yeah, Verlis Johnson. He's got a lineage that way, I believe. But you know, the Brother Brunken is almost. I'm sure he's a good, decent brother. We don't have anything to say about him, but he is just one of those outlying Elijahs who. Not really doing anything, not really harming anything except themselves. But in this case with Brother Sam, Brother Sam is a man with ability. He has a lot of ability. And with that ability, unfortunately, went a lot of pride and ambition. He was once the vice president, elected vice president of Waco. But it was not enough for him, and he left them after time, and he has established his own group. And because of his ability and energy and talent, he has deceived, the enemy has used him to deceive a lot of people out there. It's a lot of people. A lot of people seem to be eager to have a prophet come and take care of all their needs, okay, to think, all their cognitive, doctrinal needs, okay? You just don't need to think, accept what he has for you, and go on. Now, it is sad, it is wrong, and people in this situation mostly can't be reached. You would say, oh, well, when he calls for Ezekiel 9 and it's wrong, people will wake up, a few. But he's already had dates, some date that he called wrong, and he's still going, okay? Brother Ariel has a new date, I noticed recently. He has set the new time at 22, September 22, 22. He's into the twos there, it looks like. But these brethren, they hurt themselves, but they also hurt the people who they have fooled. And we need to be concerned about them. It's real easy for us to laugh at them and look down on them and so on, but it's a mistake. I really think that if we saw people drowning and you were able to do something, throw a rope to them and so on, you would do that. And just because you cannot see these people drowning, they're drowning. They are truly drowning in their sin. We need to do things for them. We need to help them. Don't help them by condemning them. I know I have had some very direct words for Brother Sam, but Brother Sam is not in our jurisdiction. We cannot help Brother Sam. Only God can save Brother Sam at this point. But those other people, we need to work for them in love, and there should not be one person in Davidia, and especially not one minister, who is not concerned about the sheep. When their sheep stray, you go and get them. You do what it takes. You know, you have to do these things in reality in a way. I have actually been out in the middle of the night looking for stray goats, which unfortunately there was a reason why they had to stray, but a dog reason. but you go out there, okay? You go out there and through the woods in the middle of the night, dark, and you have to do what you have to do. And it's a small thing for goats, whether you do it or not, in one sense. But think about, people are infinitely more precious. So I can understand the leaders in our sister groups who are so callous, they don't do a thing. I never see them doing a thing. And they need to, and I've heard them criticized by their own people too for that very same behavior of not being out there for the sheep when they're needed. But they do need to take it seriously if they're going to be accepted by the Lord and not spewed out along with all the other unfaithful shepherds. We think that we are not in that category. Brethren, we will be spewed out in a moment if we are unfaithful. So I hope that that we will be very concerned about this. There's two ways to work. You can work therapeutically for people who already are ill, and you can also work to prevent the illness. These things that you have here are useful for prevention. Okay, if not one person should, if from this point on, individual should come down with this illness. And I'm going to read this here from 2SR to close, 285. He who denies the inspired interpretation of the Scriptures is denying the office of the Holy Spirit and is sinning against him, committing the unpardonable sin. Do you see why I said that there's nothing I could do for Brother Sam? He's in the Lord's hands. He has again and again denied the things that Brother Hadaf has said. Brother Hadaf said, the Elijah of today, the antitypical Elijah of today, again and again and again. And Brother Sam casually sweeps that aside and says, no, I am an antitypical Elijah. And so when you do that, you have sinned against the Holy Spirit. It's a very serious situation. Very, very serious, and we're very sorry about it. But let us not be in that situation ourselves, and let's hope that there's no one out there who will deny these things. You cannot deny the message. Once you know the message and you're going to deny the message, we put ourselves in the case of sinning against the Holy Spirit, the unpardonable sin. So let us be faithful. Whatever heresy comes down the pike, whatever attacks come down the pike. If you are thinking that Brother Trevor is your leader, you are wrong. And not one person should say that. Okay? It is the Lord that is leading us. Or he's not. But we believe that the Lord is leading us. And whatever they do, they can blacken Brother Trevor here and there, not that much, but they can try, but they cannot blacken the Lord. Okay, they cannot cause you to lose your faith in the Lord. So hold on to the Lord. It's a long road ahead in the sense that I remember my wife and I, when we were in Haiti, there was a long road where I hear it's fixed now, but it was very, very rough. And as we were going over it the second time, I think it was the second time, I said, oh, I forgot how bad this road was. And my wife said, I'll never forget that as long as I live. But that's how the road is. It's going to be rough. It's the last mile, but you'll be surprised on some of those roads. You would just be surprised what roads can be like. And it's going to be rough the last mile home, but it's worth it. It's all going to be a million times worth it if we just hold on. Thank you.